Hi, this is Lori, and this is my homework for Paul McWhorter's Pico W class, lesson number 12. In this lesson, we're learning how to hook up an RGB LED and use it with pulse width modulation. For the homework, Paul asked us to create a program that asks the user which color they'd like to display, and we should give them some options, the basic colors, red, green, blue, yellow, orange, that so forth, and allow them to choose and then display that color on our RGB LED. First, we'll just take a quick look at my circuit. Have my Pico, my LED, RGB LED, my current limiting resistors, and we have everything connected back to GPIO pins on the Pico. And then I'm trying another type of diffuser to let this show, so I just made this little diffuser with some tissue paper, hoping that that might look nicer on the video screen so we can see the colors a little bit better. So we'll put that in place and give that a go. Now for the code, here's importing the modules we need. Then we're going to set up our red, green, and blue LEDs as pulse width modulation objects onto the pins that each of them are connected to, set the frequency, and initialize them as off. Then I'm going to use a dictionary to store RGB codes for the colors that we want the user to be able to choose from. I'm just pretty familiar with RGB codes, and I think it's an easy way to input colors and work with those. Now we'll see that I have to scale these 8-bit numbers from 0 to 255 for the red, green, and blue back to the 16-bit number that we need for our pulse width modulation functions in MicroPython for our Pico. So I'll have to do a little bit of shifting, but I think this is an easier way to work with them, at least it is for me. The nice thing about dictionaries is they're kind of a lookup table, so I'll be able to say, you know, if the user inputted red, then I can grab this code and say, okay, they asked for red, so give me this code. They asked for blue, give me this code. And you can also extend dictionaries pretty easily. So we could put a whole bunch of colors in here if we wanted to allow the user to type in some other colors and have more choices, for example. So dictionary is a nice way to go, I think, for this kind of a project. I'm going to use the try and accept, so we can use Control-C to exit from the program. And then in the while true loop, we're going to ask the user to either input a color, and then I'm also going to allow them to input RGB if they want to input the RGB code for a different color. So it allows them to light any color they'd like that they have an RGB code for. So we'll ask for that. We'll store that in user color. Then we're going to go look up and see if that color in that piece of text is in our dictionary. So this is what the code will do. It'll go look up in the colors dictionary to try to get that text. And you can see I took user color and I applied the lower method to it. So if our user types in mixed cases or all capitals for the text, I'll just make it all lowercase, because when we go back to my dictionary, you can see I have it in here as lowercase, so I need to have it all that way. So that's one way to kind of fix it, so even if the user types mixed case or all caps, you can still use the text that they inputted. Then if we find one of the colors in the dictionary, then we're going to go ahead and put those codes in for that particular color that we found, and then we're going to give it the red, green, and blue components, and then I'm going to use bitwise operation to shift that 8-bit value into a 16-bit value that our duty U16 function expects. Next, if we didn't find one of the colors in the dictionary, perhaps they typed in RGB, and then we'll execute this set of code if they did that. So we'll tell them to enter the code, and we'll get each of the values for red, green, and blue, and we'll use the same sort of bitwise operation to scale the number back to the 16-bit number that we want. And then last, if they didn't do either of those two things, then they typed in something else, and we'll just say that's an invalid entry and they should try again. And since this is in a while true loop, it'll just keep looping through until the user presses Control-C and turns everything off. Let's let it go. All right. And let's just go down the list a little bit here. Let's type in red. And good red. So let's try some mixed case. How about green with a capital? Well, that works too. Orange and yellow, I struggled a little bit to find the best colors. That actually looks pretty good on the screen. I think it's a little too yellow in real life. Yeah, and yellow itself was also a hard one to get a perfect color from. Still looks a little too greenish to me. So I think we could mess some more with the colors. Let's type in something that isn't going to be found, and we'll get the invalid entry. And let's try the RGB part. So I'll type in RGB, and we'll type in maybe a real light color. And maybe, I don't know, 29 for blue. Oh, that's a good looking purple, actually. I like that one. And then we'll Control C to end. And that's the program. So, really fun course, Paul, and thanks for this lesson.